Stanbic believes in Zambia and believes in Zambia's growth. And we know that a huge part of Zambia's growth, especially from the economic side, is owed to the mining sector. The mining sector has made major contributions to Zambia's economy, and it continues to do so. And that is why when we hear that Africa is having discussions on mining, we definitely have to be a part of that. So there's currently the mining Indaba that's taking place in Cape Town, South Africa, with various stakeholders coming through for these discussions. And Zambia has not been left out. Stanbic Bank has not been left out. In fact, Stanbic Bank is a silver sponsor, and this is in partnership with the Standard Group. And that is why we'll also be getting to understand why Stanbic thinks it's so important to be a part of this and what they're also doing in ensuring that they contribute to Zambia's growth through mining. Joining us in studio is the head of corporate and investment banking at Stanbic Bank, Ms. Helen Lubamba. Good morning and welcome to the Phoenix Breakfast.
Good morning. And thank you for having me.
Yeah, how's the morning going so far? Hope we didn't get you up too early.
No. Thanks for giving me an incentive to beat the traffic.
Great to have you here. The theme for the 2025 Mining Indaba is future-proofing African mining today. Let's start from there. What's your interpretation of this theme? And just telling us also more about your participation at the Mining Indaba.
Okay, thank you very much. I mean, last year, if we look at what happened last year, we had the theme was around innovation driving mining growth. And that's when we had the big announcement about cobalt, the mining discovery there, using innovative techniques and AI to discover huge deposits. So I think it's a continuation of that theme, which is talking about how do we make the mining industry more sustainable going forward. Because we've seen the history of mining where it's kind of gone into peaks where we've had huge developments in mines going on, then slowdowns, etc. But what we need to be looking at from a mining industry perspective is the fuller impact on the environment, not just the economy, but also the social framework. So in terms of future-proofing, how do we ensure that mining continues to be a stable contributor to our social and economic fabric going forward? So what we are looking at in that sense is not just driving innovative ways of exploration, because without exploration, mining dies. So we need to continue finding these deposits. And so that's one part. The other part is how do we ensure that the economies where the mining activities are happening are servicing the local economies as well as the global economies. So I think in the past, mining has had a big rap about investors coming in, taking and going. So now it's about ensuring the economies that the mining sectors are operating in are continuing to contribute to the growth of the economies in a sustainable manner, and not in just peaks and drops. So what that calls for: better collaboration between the various stakeholders, the mining companies, the government, the various government agencies and development agencies, as well as the financiers. And that's how the likes of Stanbic Bank come in terms of how do we support the mining sector and the mining ecosystem. So it's not just about the direct mining itself, as well as downstream into the services that feed through the mining activities.
And even just with the participation, I mean, we've seen already the chief executive is there, and he's been quite busy at an interview with CNBC Africa. Just getting further into your participation and your support also towards the mining sector. Just run us through that as well. Okay.
So Stanbic Bank Zambia, in partnership with our parent company, which is Standard Bank Group, we've invested over $5 billion in the mining sector over the 65 years we've been operating. Actually, we've been here for more than 65 years that we've been operating in Zambia. So if you look at all the key mining developments from the traditional old copper belt right up into the new explorations in the northwestern
the
part
new
of
copper
the
belt,
the new copper belt, yeah. So we've been a part of that journey right from the start. If you look at what we now call Barrick Lumwana and its old the initial explorations and mining developments that happened then, and that was brownfields. cutting new ground. So we were involved in that development, and we continue to support the mining sector. FQM being one of our biggest portfolios in the mining sector, and continue to. The revival of the old copper belt is good news for us. So we are looking at that and looking at opportunities for us to participate in that. So keenly looking at those opportunities there, and I'm sure we'll be making some announcements in the near future about what we're doing there.
Okay. All right. Now, talking about mining value chain, you have mentioned that mining value chain is a big part of the mines. Are you able then to share light on how Stanbic is supporting them?
A big part of mining is energy, and I think energy has been very topical for really serious reasons, and it's come to a head with the drought situation that we had. That was announced, the emergency that was announced last year in April, that has impacted the economy, and predominantly mining. If you look at mining, takes up. So when you have a country that relies on the hydrology to produce its energy, as Zambia does, more than 80% of energy produced in Zambia comes from hydro, and then you have climate impact. So that's a huge part of the ecosystem. So a big focus for us has been in supporting the energy sector, in terms of trying to make up for the deficit, which right now is sitting about 1,300 megawatts. I think when we started with the crisis, the numbers that were coming out was about 750 megawatts, but now it's clear that number and that gap is bigger than that. In terms of just managing and to keep the mining operations going at current production, we need to ensure that we are bringing in the energy, and so supporting activities and the independent power producers, as well as the main utility company, ZESCO, in bringing in the power that's required just for the wider economy, but more importantly to keep the mining sector going.
Mm-hmm. And also, Zambia is obviously coming from a drought, obviously, which affected a lot of people last year, and this has affected the economic sector. How would you say the drought has impacted the mining sector, of which, of course, is Zambia's key sector in terms of GDP growth?
I think directly it's the energy. And so what that requires is for us to start diversifying our energy sources. We're still going to need to rely on the hydro-produced energy, because what you need is stability on the system. So hydro energy is one of the best sources of stable energy to keep the grid stable. But what we can do is supplement it with renewable energy, and that is what is happening. And sometimes, when you have necessity, or when you are in dire straits, that's when all the engines kick in to find a solution. So over the last year, actually, even beyond that, we've had a lot of solutions being brought to the table by various players. And then what we've also had that's really worked well is the collaboration that we're seeing coming from the government, from the Energy Regulation Board, ZESCO themselves, and all different parties to come together to see how we can solve for this. And we've seen the issue of tariffs being addressed as well. I know for the consumer, for the household consumer, that brings an extra burden with the cost of living. That's the high cost of living that we're having to grapple with. But it also, on the flip side, it also ensures that it becomes more economically viable for independent and private players to come in and try to solve for the energy situation, and that's where we've seen a lot of activity coming in to try and close this gap.
I think when you talk about mining, one of the key issues that we definitely need to highlight, especially we've talked about climate impact and so on, is sustainable mining. Let's also talk about as Stanbic, your role in ensuring that there's sustainable mining, investing in the green economy as well? How have you been able to do this?
Okay, so in terms of if we look at sustainable mining, I guess what we're talking about, and that's where the theme future proofing comes in, is to say it's not just mining for today, it's mining for the future, and making sure that the activities of the mining companies and the impact that they have for the future are supported to make sure that we continue to drive economic growth. So sustainable mining, we're looking at not just the energy input, which I've spoken about quite a bit, but it's also looking at how are the mining activities themselves conducting themselves in terms of how they impact the environment that they operate in. So as financiers, we are called upon to make sure that when we do lend in a responsible manner. So some of these things include looking at the environmental impact, looking at even supporting environmental protection guarantees, which are required by the Mining Safeties Board to ensure that mining activities, any quarrying activities, those need to be in place. Should there be any disaster, accident, etc., that we're able to, the mining companies are able to employ operations to be able to clean up. And then sustainability also goes into sustaining those that depend on the mines. If you look at the Copper Belt, for example, that was built around the mining companies that came in over 100 years ago, established themselves, and then you had communities built around that. When the mining companies suffer, the wider community suffers.
True.
So how do we ensure that the mining activities remain a sustainable form of activity in the environments? And we're seeing great works being done. If you look at what's happening in the Northwestern Province by the likes of the Barracks and FQM, they're actually making sure that the communities around them they're driving initiatives whereby the social fabric goes beyond mining, so that if the mines in 20 years' time, if innovation doesn't change the landscape and mining has to cease, those communities continue to thrive. So various activities, diversifying the activities of the people that live in those areas into agriculture and other means of life are conducted and supported by the mining companies for the sustainability of the social fabric.
Okay, all right. So with this year's mining Indaba taking place, as Stanbic, what are you hoping to get out from the mining Indaba?
What's been good over the last few years of the Indaba is actually hearing stories of not just a group of people coming together and talking about what the plans are, but actually coming to talk about what has actually materialized since the last time they met. So when at the mining Indaba, you're hearing
Mystic, and that's why we're very glad and happy that Stanbic Bank is actively participating as a silver sponsor in partnership with the Standard Bank Group over there in South Africa. And we're grateful to you for joining us this morning and giving us more insight into the mining Indaba and generally Stanbic Bank's support to the mining sector. Thank you for joining us this morning.
No, thank you for having me.
We'll be joined by the Head of Corporate and Investment Banking at Stanbic Bank, Ms. Helen Lubamba, talking about the mining Indaba. If you head over to the Stanbic Bank Facebook page, you'll be able to get more updates of what is happening over there, the discussions that are taking place, including a link to the interview that had the Chief Executive of Stanbic Bank having an interview on CNBC Africa for the investment in mining Indaba that's taking place in Cape Town, South Africa. This is where Breakfast with Stanbic ends for today, but back again tomorrow from 6:30 to 8. The Phoenix Breakfast continues as we head into the third and final hour after 8. Up next also is the main news bulletin with Paddy Mugando at 8.
Shape your world. It's a wonderful expression. Easy to say, but really not so easy to do. That's why we created Stanbic Private Banking for the trailblazers, the people who don't settle for average, those men and women determined to thrive and reach new heights, the people who truly shape their world. We shape your banking experience so that as you achieve more, you can expect more expert financial advice, more of everything. Search Stanbic Private Banking. We'll help.